This is the Can Crushers Wrestling Podcast.
The following contest is scheduled for one fall.
Let's go nuts! It's Jimmy Nuts! Right out of the door!
With your hosts, Mark Martinez.
Because I'm the Mark and I'm awesome!
The Guru.
Today I'm going to break it down for all you simpleton sweat hogs listening out there in Can Crusher Nation. I don't mean to come out here week after week and toot my own horn, but toot.
And the English Professor.
It is I, the English professor from the County of Kings, speaking the English of the Queen.
Hey, this is former WWE superstar Duke the Dumpster Drosy, and you are listening to the Can Crushers Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another Can Crusher Spotlight. I am your host, Mr. Mark Martinez, and joining me this week for a very special episode is the English Professor. John, how are you doing? I'm excited to get into this.
I'm really excited to get into this interview. We're going to be talking to Joey Cassata from Wrestling with Joeylicious. And you brought this to my attention, Mark. I didn't know what in the world you were talking about. I didn't know who this guy was, what he does. And you sent me some links and things to kind of check out. This is going to be a lot of fun. I have a lot of things I want to ask this guy. Namely, I want to ask him how he got all those wrestlers on his TV show and where he got all his action figures.
See, I got my thumbprint. I'm watching. I'm paying attention, you know?
You do.
Is it a thumbprint or a thumb hold? Thumb hold, I think.
Something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
Thumbprint. No, it's thumbprint. Yeah, you're right.
It's right. This is fun, John. What he does, he interacts with, we saw Piper, we saw Volkov, we saw the Sheik. Man, these are our boys from the 80s.
I know, and he has them on his TV show. This is going to be a fun interview. I have a lot of things that I want to know from this guy. So why don't we hear from our sponsor, Collar and Elbow, and then we'll get right into this.
All right, here comes Al Snow. No pushing around. Al Snow, Collar and Elbow. Use promo code CANCRUSHERS, all one word, capital C in Can, capital C in Crushers. You'll get 10% off. Hats, hoodies, tees, you guys know the shtick. Go to Collar and Elbow. They got some amazing shirts. But right after this, we come back with Joeylicious.
Wrestling. A love and a passion we all share. I've started a wrestling brand. The wrestling brand. A brand founded on the aspects of wrestling. Two entities working together to create a product that connect emotionally for people everywhere. Collar and Elbow is the brand. Passion and love for wrestling is the drive. I am Al Snow, and this is Collar and Elbow, the wrestling brand.
Welcome back to Can Crushers, listeners. It is I, the English Professor, joined by your host, Mark Martinez. We just heard from Al Snow and Collar and Elbow. I'm wearing my Mean Gene Okerlund Collar and Elbow shirt. Mark, be honest, are you wearing a Collar and Elbow shirt today?
I'm not, but I'm wearing my Louisville Bats alternate shirt. So I'm still in Louisville with OVW. So Al will still be all right. Yeah.
Close enough. This week's Spotlight, I'm really stoked about this. We have Joey Cassata, also known as Joeylicious. Joey, welcome to the Can Crusher Spotlight. It's a real pleasure to have you on.
Woo! What's up, boys? Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. I love the show. It's funny seeing you guys. You guys don't sound like what I thought you would look like.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Especially the professor.
Wait, what are we supposed to look like? Was John supposed to be nerdy, not a fat Italian? And I'm supposed to be this little Mexican guy?
No comment.
Damn it. All right.
So, Mark, for those unaware, and I was unaware until you brought this to my attention, and boy, am I glad you did. It's called Wrestling with Joeylicious, right, Joe? There's a book, there's a TV show or an Amazon show, and I've caught a few episodes. They're awesome. So tell me, first of all, how did you think of this? What transpired in your mind to put this thing together?
So Joeylicious is really semi-based on my real life. It's almost like, so I'm a rock musician in real life. You know, my band toured all over the world with, lots of really big acts. I do Broadway work. I'm a drummer on Broadway. I do a lot of stuff in the rock entertainment music world. So this Joeylicious wrestling world is almost like my alternate reality. It's like a what if I didn't go along the path of a rock musician and I wanted to become a professional wrestler. So there's a lot of stuff in the book, especially like the flashbacks or even in the series, that is based on my real life and my real mom and my real best friend, Scally, who was a really big part of the show. But the way it really came about was I had an old television show called Z-Rock on IFC for a couple seasons. And the show was about my band. It was a scripted, semi-scripted show. It wasn't a reality show, a comedy. We had guest stars galore, from Dee Snider to Joan Rivers was one of the main guest stars, Gilbert Gottfried. And one of the episodes, Chris Jericho appeared as a guest star. And in that episode, my band, and the concept of the show was we were a kids band during the day and a rock band at night. And that's kind of how we paid the bills. And that's also based on my real life. And in this episode of Z-Rock, Chris Jericho appeared on the episode as like this crazy version of himself. And we were playing a little kid's birthday party that happened to be a wrestling themed birthday party. And the producers, came to me earlier, in the season, and they said, "Hey, we're doing this episode where it's going to be, a wrestling episode, and we want you to dress as Hulk Hogan, and we want the other two guys in the band to dress as like Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior, and so on and so forth." And I said, "Hey, wait a second, that sounds like a great." First of all, they already knew I'm a giant wrestling fan, so that's kind of why the episode came about. So I said, "Hey, wait a second, I have a better idea. Why don't we do our own wrestling characters? Let's make up our own wrestling characters and we can be those in the show." And they were like, "What the hell are you talking about? What wrestling characters?" So, I kind of went into the origins of Joeylicious, which Joeylicious has been around since I'm 10 years old. Joeylicious was my character that I was going to be if I ever became the WWF champion. You know what I mean? I saw Hulk Hogan win the title at Madison Square Garden in 1984, live with, fighting the Iron Sheik. And ever since that day, I dreamt of becoming a professional wrestler. And that moment, and it's even where the book opens up, that moment is where I decided this Joeylicious character was going to be my alternate personality. And then, for, years later, I never really got a chance to actually wrestle live or in schools or anything. Like I said earlier, I became a rock musician. But, I would still take my championship belt out to the bar with me and, beg the bouncer to choke slam me over the fence or something to throw me out of the bar. Or, I was always, I would go out with my boas on and, people would look to pick fights with me until they realized, I was just a goofy moron pretending to be a wrestler. And that's kind of where the Joeylicious character started. So from when Z-Rock ended, I decided, let me take a script out of Sylvester Stallone's Rocky playbook and write my own series, much like he did Rocky for himself. And I decided to write this series, Wrestling with Joeylicious. So that's kind of how it started.
It's exactly what we did. John, our friends know.
Well, not
John,
exactly. He had much more.
Yeah, not exactly.
Go ahead, Mark.
It's the same scenario then. Sorry, John. We used to have casket matches outside of John's mom and dad's pizzeria. We've destroyed both parents' houses. We've got thrown out of houses because we're idiots. We are absolute idiots about this wrestling thing. John has a great persona as well. I would always change. I'd either be the snidey X-Pac or a Stone Cold. I was the douchebag, and I still am. John will say it right now. I am the biggest douchebag out there, and John agrees. He stayed Razor Ramon his whole life, and he still wants to be Razor Ramon.
Yeah,
I mean, even for me, I mean, when I was a kid, I had a room in my house that was literally dedicated only for wrestling. We had an empty room in my house growing up in Brooklyn, and I had, for Christmas, I always wanted a wrestling ring in my backyard. Of course, we could never afford that. So I got wall-to-wall mats, thick padded mats in my room. And we christened it. I even had a sign on the door, Madison Square Room. And, we would have battle royal matches, and we would literally, to win the battle royal match, you would have to throw all your buddies out of the room. And that's how you'd win. As soon as you throw them out of the entranceway of the room, it's like throwing them over the top rope. He's out. So same thing. We're all goofy wrestling morons, marks and fanatics. I just happened to decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to recreate my childhood and write my own TV show, and I'm going to go get some wrestling legends to be a part of it.
So, Joey, we're about your age, or you're maybe, closer to the age of a couple of one of my older brothers who introduced me to pro wrestling. And you mentioned New York City. They snuck into my room one night and pulled me out of bed at midnight on a Saturday night. Maybe you know where I'm going with this. And they turned it to WOR, and that was my introduction. That and the magazines. My brothers flipped through magazines and showed me who everybody was. And I was 5 or 6. My mother wouldn't let me stay up. But yeah, they snuck me downstairs and put me in front of the TV, and I was hooked ever since. What's your story? How did you come across this wacky and wild world of pro wrestling?
So almost just like you said, I watched as a kid in New York, WOR, Channel 9 in New York. That's what made me start watching wrestling. So as a little kid, I was a really big Kiss fan. And, I saw Kiss at Madison Square Garden when I was 5 years old, and they were my heroes. They were the be-all, end-all, of my childhood. And then, but I had, up until that point, I had never seen them speak or an interview. I just knew their music, and I knew they looked like these crazy superheroes. So I fell in love with them. But wrestling, so I was just, I have an older brother also, and we were flipping, the channels one Saturday morning, and I came across something on Channel 9 that I'd never seen before. And it wasn't the wrestling that got me hooked. It was the promos. It was these over-the-top characters yelling into the microphone, spitting all over themselves, so fired up, yelling at the camera. I couldn't believe what I was watching. Again, because Kiss up to that point were my heroes, I don't even know what Kiss's personalities were at that point. These guys became my male role models as a kid. My mom and dad were divorced at this time, so professional wrestlers kind of became my male role model. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I think I got all my traits from those old promos, back then. So I'm still that kid today. So I think the very first thing that I ever saw that got me hooked was the Don Morocco, Jimmy Snuka feud. And I think the very first thing I saw was when Morocco spits on Snuka, and Snuka literally loses his mind and, starts, tries to get him through the door, and he can't get, it's just, I was immediately hooked from that moment on. And then, from that moment, I went to see Madison Square Garden wrestling every Monday, the first Monday of every month for probably 2.5 or 3 years straight.
Wow. That fly over the top rope, Joe, we take that for granted these days, what Snuka did to Morocco. That blew the roof off the place. That was unbelievable. Crazy. Yeah, seeing him fly over the ropes like that.
So we'll bounce around. You did an episode of Joeylicious with Snuka. So that had to have been the God episode for you. Your icon, right?
I mean, again, so the premise for your listeners, the premise of Wrestling with Joeylicious is exactly what we're talking about. Think of, this lifelong wrestling fanatic that has been trying to become a wrestler his whole life. He's now in his 40s. He's never succeeded, but he's still trying. He's wrestling in grammar school gymnasiums in front of nuns and second graders every week. And he just never made it to the big time, but nothing's going to stop him. He doesn't have a real job. He lives at home with his mom. He doesn't pay rent. He's like a 40-year-old big baby still. And what happens throughout the show, wrestling legends appear to him in his imagination to kind of give him this wacky guidance, which always winds up backfiring on poor Joeylicious. It's much like if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, how Larry David always self-sabotages himself. If he would just tell the truth and do the right thing one episode, none of the stuff he gets into would ever happen to him. And much like Joeylicious, if Joeylicious didn't have this, mental disability of having these wrestlers appear in his head all the time, I think he might succeed one day. But unfortunately, every time one of these wrestlers appear to him, he's the only one that sees them. and something winds up happening to leave him in this awkward situation. So that's the premise of Joeylicious. And when I went about trying to get legends involved, originally I started writing the show and I said, I need something to spice it up. And I know just the thing. All of the 80s and even 90s wrestlers at this time, I feel like they're still absolute superstars. They're guys that nobody uses because there's nowhere to use them. They can't wrestle anymore. WWE won't use them on the mic or, managerial skills. They just don't want those old guys around anymore for some reason. So I wanted to create this outlet that could really showcase how good they are still on the mic in front of the camera. And, once I started writing the episodes, I started reaching out to as many, legends as I could. And, people always ask me, well, how could you get these legends on board? Much like anyone, you literally just do research. You find agents, you find their manager contact numbers, you find their contact numbers. And it just so happens Jimmy Snuka was the first person that I got their contact info for, and he responded to me. It was actually his wife, Carol, who responded to me. I sent Jimmy a little treatment, a little clips, of what the show could be, along with a scene from the Chris Jericho episode of my old show, Z-Rock, which kind of showed the Joeylicious character, and it showed, Chris and I getting into this weird altercation, which didn't end well for Chris, by the way. He kind of broke his ankle in the situation. But you could see that episode, by the way. It's still streaming on Amazon and on my YouTube page of Z-Rock. And, I got in touch with Snuka, and he was on board immediately. He loved the idea. And, fast forward about 2 weeks later, we were on a park bench in the middle of the Bronx filming this episode.
In the coconut, it had to hurt, right? Let's keep it kayfabe. It had to hurt, right?
So, of course, once I got Jimmy on board, and even before I got him on board, the script that I wrote, and I'm sure you guys would do the same thing. I either wanted to take a Superfly splash from him, which he couldn't do, in the middle of the street in the Bronx, or have him smash me in the head with a coconut. And of course, he was right on board with that. Luckily, I scored the coconut pretty good before he blasted. Oh my God! I mean, I'm not taking the coconut to the head.
No.
Is this kayfabe 100% all the time?
No, not at all.
Most of the time. With the coconut incident, Mark and I have gone back and forth with wondering how much the wrestlers are still playing us. And Roddy Piper was the sort of guy who said, I don't want to ruin it for you. So much love to Roddy Piper. We met him, but he would tell you, I really had to crack him with that coconut, and it ruined Jimmy Snuka's career, and he never quite recovered. You kind of answered this, but how receptive was Superfly to this? Was it a gag to him, or was it, hey, man, this is kind of personal, Roddy hurt me with this?
Meaning for my show?
Yes.
Oh, Jimmy was on board with it immediately. He loved the idea. Again, when I pitch the show to everyone, the first thing I want them to understand is, number one, that these characters are in my imagination. So anything they do, it could be as crazy and wacky as they want because it's not real. It's really what's happening in my imagination. And even at the end of that Snuka episode, not to give it away, after he blasts me in the head with the coconut, you basically see this large woman standing over me at the bus stop. I have a rock in my hand, and she's like, "You stupid fool! You hit yourself in the head with a rock." And for the last time, my name's Shirley, not Snuka. So it kind of gives it away that Snuka was never really there. So once they understand the wacky world that I'm building, then they start to warm up to all the ideas. Same thing happened with Roddy Piper when we filmed with Roddy. Roddy was on board. Once I got Snuka on film, I kind of pitched that as the template of the show. And Roddy was on board as soon as he saw that scene. He loved the whole comedy of it. But when he got to set, he wasn't sure either about, what do I do here? What's the comedy here? Because I want a lot of the dialogue from the wrestlers to be improvised. I have an outline, but I want them to be themselves. And it took him about a half an hour. And once he got the hang of it, he just let loose.
So that was my next question. Then I've often wondered, you talk about lines written for the wrestlers today versus how these guys improvised. So some of these guys, it was a little bit of both. You wrote some of their lines, but in a situation like Roddy Piper, he wanted to be able to improvise more.
Absolutely. So again, we have the full dialogue written out, and we tell them, this is what we want to hit. These are kind of the jokes and the spots we want to hit, and all the, the little segments that we want to bridge from one to the other. How are we going to get from point A to point B and so on? But we tell them, you do not have to say word for word what's there. Make it your own. Be yourself. Whatever you can do to spice it up or, be even more exaggerated, please do it. Nobody knows Roddy Piper better than Roddy Piper. Nobody knows Mick Foley better than Mick Foley. So even, a great example is when we filmed with Mick Foley, we had this scene scripted out that I'm in the hospital bed. We kind of took the play off where he has that scene with Stone Cold in the hospital bed, and we kind of played it off that I had a bad stomach ache because I'm lactose intolerant. And, Mick kind of comes in, teaching me about being hardcore. And I'm like, Mick, I'm pretty hardcore already. He's like, you just sent your mother away because you have a tummy ache. And I try to explain to him I can't drink milk. And he goes into this speech about you should drink almond milk. And all of that was in the script. But then Mick came up with one of the funniest lines in the series. He says, well, Joey, and I'm like, almond milk? How do you make milk from almonds? And Mick says, well, Joey, as you know, almonds don't have nipples. And he goes into this long thing about how he makes almond milk. And we had to film that scene 5 or 6 times because the crew just kept cracking up because it was all improvised.
So we talked about the show a little bit, and we'll wrap back around to the show because there's more. But the book being the #1 bestseller right now on Amazon, how much do they link together? Is there more stories in the book? Are there more shows coming out of the book? Let's talk about the book for a little bit because you've crushed everybody. Sweet trailer, by the way, too, showing everybody getting blasted away if you haven't seen that on YouTube.
Andre got body slammed, and Jim Ross got knocked off. Go ahead, Joey. Sorry.
Yeah, no, again, it's amazing. The book, when the first few weeks it came out, was literally the #1 wrestling book on Amazon. Like you mentioned, we made that trailer of all the books that we passed, whether it was the Young Bucks or Jim Ross, and we even passed Pro Wrestling Illustrated, this month, it's insane. But the book, the way the book really started was, this was never intended to be a book. This was a television series, a streaming service series, and because of COVID, everything got shut down. Production got shut down. We couldn't do our shorts anymore. We couldn't, start negotiating. We had some deals in place for our full series. We were talking to Amazon Prime. We were talking to Netflix. We were talking to a lot of other companies to stream full episodes of Wrestling with Joeylicious. We had the whole season 1 and season 2 mapped out. We had all of our guest stars locked up with, under, quasi contracts from Hulk Hogan to Ric Flair to Mick Foley. All of these guys are on board with the show. But unfortunately, because of COVID, all of that got shut down. For me, I'm not a guy that can just sit around and say, okay, let me wait 9 months and see if we can get this started again. So my partner and I, basically what we did was we took season 1 scripts and we basically made them into a book. We made them into the first book of Wrestling with Joeylicious. The book that's on sale on Amazon right now is the first half of season 1. It kind of leaves off on a little cliffhanger where it is. And then the second book is already written because season 1 is already written. So that'll be coming out probably in January too. But if you read the book, it's exactly what the show is and what will be.
So when you start filming again, you can call us. We can be extras. We're all about coming to New York. We'll come and have some cake at John's cousin's and everything. Yeah, we're all about being part of this now. Right, John?
Yeah, if we're gonna go there now, Joey, I'm just gonna go ahead and put that out there. I've performed on stage, student films, nothing that's ever been in Hollywood. But if you need anybody, I'm your man. I can be there in about 6 hours. I'm in Pittsburgh right now.
It'll probably take him. It'll take him 8 because he sucks at driving. So I'll drive to Pittsburgh to pick him up and drive him there. This way, I'm part of it too.
We'll both be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're always looking for good wrestling minds. Of course, we might make you take some bumps, to kind of initiate you. And, a couple of the scenes that I had to do, again, because I'm not a wrestler. I've been in a ring, a couple of times and goofed around as a kid. But, a lot of the scenes I was taking bumps for the first time. It's brutal, and having Mick Foley swing a chair over your head. And again, with the trickery of Hollywood, of course, he didn't really hit me with the chair, but the way we did it, if Mick slips up even this much, I was going to be unconscious. And the same thing, with Roddy. These guys are powerful guys. If you've ever been in the presence of these wrestlers, even if they're not active wrestlers, when Roddy got me in a sleeper hold and I'm trying to deliver my lines in the sleeper hold, I was legitimately choking. So it's not acting when you see me saying, Roddy, it was real. So if you guys want to come down and get a beating, take a DDT from Jake the Snake, or
hell yeah,
maybe have Ted DiBiase, do something to you, I'm in.
I'm
all right. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that
if you can knock me out for a while, that's all right too. John's knocked me out several times in my life, so I'm good.
I'm probably responsible for a few of those concussions, Mark. You mentioned the acting. I watched these episodes, and Arn Anderson said Bobby Heenan could have been a comedian. Watching a couple of these, I'm glad they chose wrestling, but had Mick Foley or Roddy Piper maybe given Hollywood a legitimate shot, those guys are talented, and they have a very natural on-camera presence. They can deliver the lines.
And again, like I mentioned earlier, these guys are absolute superstars still. You got to understand, they were doing live promos on camera for 30 years, just, spitting out improv lines in front of a camera for how long, on wrestling, every week, live TV. So they're superstars that aren't being utilized in the entertainment business today. John, you're so right. They can absolutely excel, but will Hollywood give them a chance? I don't know if a guy like Mick is going to get roles in Hollywood, but you know what? That's why my show, I think, is a great outlet for all of them. And that's why, when I first started filming this show and word got out that I was looking for wrestling legends to be part of the show, these guys started contacting me. I would get voicemails from Jimmy Hart and Ted DiBiase. I woke up one morning, I had a text message from Ric Flair, completely out of the blue. Literally just talking, hey, heard from so-and-so about the new show. Give me a buzz, definitely interested. I want to talk about it. So, I think the word got out there that, hey, we might have a little outlet that we can show what we can still do. And I think that's what's going to happen once we can start filming again. And once these networks realize what we're doing and see the talent, like you said, John, of Mick and guys like Roddy. Of course, Roddy's not with us anymore, but even Tito Santana, we had a speech. We had that speech written out for him. A lot of it was written out. He added a couple little lines to it. That's not easy to deliver. And he delivered it. We had to take a couple different angles of that speech. He delivered it flawlessly every time. They're so smart, so witty, and so comedic. They're gold in front of the camera.
They really are. They really are. Let's take a break from Joeylicious a minute. And I got to bring up that you're wearing an amazing shirt right now. NWA Power. I love it. We talked a little bit prior that you're a huge fan. Let's talk about wrestling today, and let's start with NWA Power. We hear there's a buzz coming back, Joey. Are you excited?
I was crushed when they stopped filming because of COVID. I thought it was the freshest, best thing that I've seen in wrestling in 15, 20 years. I mean that. I know people say, oh, give me a break. It had this, they went against the grain, which was back to the old school model of this studio wrestling where, the guys would come through the curtain and the audience would be 5 feet from them. If anyone has not seen or heard of NWA Power, go on YouTube, check it out. To me, it's the greatest thing right now going in wrestling. Don't get me wrong. I still watch WWE periodically. I still watch AEW. There's some great stuff in AEW. Chris Jericho still doing amazing work there. But NWA Power, not only the old school feel of it, but if you watched it from the beginning, and I encourage anyone who hasn't seen it, watch it from like the episode 1, you can see every week with the roster they have, each week, the wrestlers building their characters, building their storylines, feeling each other out, doing what works, getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work. You could feel it being written on camera every week. Whereas opposed to, WWE today where there's, 50 writers backstage scripting everything out months in advance. It just felt fresh and exciting. I love it.
Yeah, it is certainly a good show, and we miss it a lot. It was a bummer that it's gone away for so long, but hopefully not much longer. How would you, once this business gets in our blood as fans, there's no going away. So even, I've told our listeners I took a break for a little while. Different things happen, family and whatnot. And then you eventually come back around. Did you have a little break in the action, or did you just kind of love this from the moment you discovered it on Channel 9 up until now?
No, I think, it's weird. I think it always happens to us wrestling fans. There's always some period that you get away for a little while. And my period was probably early 90s, right after the real golden age with Hogan and Macho and Warrior. Right after that, when my music career really started taking off and I started touring and gigging all the time, I started getting away from wrestling. Probably, I missed a lot of like the really cool Bret Hart years and maybe a little before that. And, that transition WWF era is the era that I kind of got out of wrestling. And then what got me back in, I was already starting to get back in, but what really hooked me again, hook, line, and sinker was Hollywood Hogan. Once Hogan turned and I saw my hero be the number one heel in the country, I said, whoa, what is happening? I watched that. I went back, tape trading. I watched all the old stuff that I missed, the couple of years before that. So I was away in the early 90s and then came back, right around the Hollywood Hogan. I guess that's 96, right? Right?
Yeah. Yep. 96.
So, I probably missed 92, 3, 4, 5, and then came back in 96. And I've been, going strong ever since. Nowadays, it's harder again because there's so much content. So I'm DVRing everything that's on, and then I'm skimming, watching the stuff that I want to watch. But, as much as I love wrestling, I can't watch 25 hours of wrestling a week. It's crazy.
It's a wonderful trying it though. Trust me, I try it every week. And my wife is like, "Get out of the house, you bum." And I'm like, "No, wrestling's on. I got a podcast."
And even
if you I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
What I was about to say, if you stop watching just a little, you could write books, you could, get your TV series going, you get more stuff done. Trust me. There's still time for wrestling, but you got to have some time to be creative too.
Play video games.
But you still tune into the older stuff, right, Joe? Even though we can't keep up with the 30 hours a week that it's on now, we're still sure to turn on the network or pop in an old DVD, right?
Almost every night before I go to bed, I'll throw on what I have DVR'd on first. Like if I have the last NXT and AEW on DVR, I'll skim through those probably, and I'll literally watch both of those shows in about 30 minutes. I'll watch the cool segments on both of those shows, and then I'll go, okay, time to go watch. And I just mentioned to you guys this to you off the air. Let me go watch some early 90s WCW. Let me go watch some 605 TBS NWA stuff. Let me go, go watch some Smoky Mountain clips.
Nice.
And stuff. I always go back to the old stuff.
And to your point, Mark, and my lack of technological abilities, you guys are talking DVR, and I'm talking DVD.
Right.
There's a difference between me and you guys.
Right. We have it already on our TVs. You have to wait for it to come out 3 weeks later on the network, right, or a repeat on Hulu or something like that. Yeah, so he's so bad, guys. He's so bad. Yeah.
So, wait, John, do you not have a DVR?
No.
I don't know.
He does not.
I don't think so.
He does not.
I don't think so.
I know this. He
doesn't even know. That's my favorite part. So you have 3 hours of Raw, you have 2 hours of SmackDown, you have 2 hours of NXT. That's already 7 hours. You got 2 hours of AEW, not counting AEW Dark. So you're talking about upwards of 10 hours already. Right. Not counting, there's a pay-per-view every week now.
Right.
Then you have, NWA Power. You have some, maybe TNA if you want to go over there, or ROH or New Japan. You're talking, upwards of 15 hours a week minimum. Set a DVR, dude. You skim right through it. It's the best.
He doesn't have it. He doesn't even know what DVR stands for. So
I will talk to my wife about that. Thank you guys for the suggestion.
So Joey, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Your favorite era of wrestling? When was it? When we were all growing up, that era?
Yeah, I mean, again, from the beginning of the Hogan era, when he, even right, before he won the title, when I remember, vividly on television watching Backlund fight the Samoans, and the Samoans were surrounding him, and Backlund goes behind the curtain, and I remember, the announcer saying, "Oh, where's Backlund going? He's leaving, he's quitting," and he comes back through the curtain with Hogan. And from that moment on, I think, that's when the Hulkamania era started. It wasn't when he won the title. It was that moment. From that moment all the way through, obviously through the Andre feud, through even, the Mega Powers and all that stuff. To me, that's the best era, the golden era, however you want to call it. Those are the years. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with my age growing up those years and, the impact that it had on me. But for me, the storyline, all of the wrestlers back then, the limited roster, which I think has a big effect on today's wrestling. I think there's just too many guys on the roster. Back then you'd have the big storyline, you'd have the main event storyline, you'd have the Intercontinental storyline, you'd have the tag team storyline, and then maybe one or two other sprinkles. You wouldn't have all the stuff that's going on today. So to me, not even close. That's the era of wrestling. And then, of course, the flip side of those same years, you got Flair and the Four Horsemen. You got the Road Warriors on the other side of the country. So that era, mid to late 80s, it can't be beat.
Yeah, it's a great point. You talk about roster. You can go back and look at some of those rosters. Crockett Promotions had maybe 35 guys. And the stories if that, yeah. And the stories they were telling with 30 or so guys were pretty awesome.
Was that
a fun time for sure?
Was that counting the Mulkeys and Thunderfoot and Pistol Pez Wiley and those guys?
Yeah.
All right, just making sure.
35 if you count those guys.
All right.
But again, going back to NWA Power, I think that's why it works.
Right.
You have, NWA Power was an hour show every week, right? And you got 3 or 4 storylines developing every single week. Maybe one week they would skip and you'd find that storyline over the next week, like the Thunder Rosa stuff when it first started, or the Camille stuff, or any of that stuff. But because the roster was nice and trimmed, you had this slick storytelling, and you could develop these characters week by week by week and make people fall in love with them. When I was watching in the 80s, I fell in love with certain characters because I saw them every week, and I loved what I saw, and I got an hour show out of it. Watching 3 hours with 75 wrestlers on it, I don't know who's who anymore.
Right.
Nobody's over either. I'll throw the first punch. Not one person who's over on Raw. For 3 hours, I don't know what is going on.
Yeah, Mark and I talked, and we weren't going to drag this through the mud, but here we go. We're dragging this through the mud. You say you would go to the Garden for those several years. Did you attend the first WrestleMania?
I did not. I couldn't get tickets for the first WrestleMania, but even though it's ridiculous sounding now, I was so excited because I did get tickets to see it on closed circuit TV. Yes. So I literally went to like this, gymnasium where you would have to buy tickets for it, and they had it playing. So I watched it live, but it was from a gymnasium on a screen. So, it was still great because I got to see WrestleMania as it was happening because there was no pay-per-views and stuff there back then. But I did not get to go to the Garden for that. I saw every Garden match, between 83 and 85, but I didn't get to see WrestleMania at the Garden.
2 weeks before that, there was a card at the Garden too, which I attended. And I wonder if you were at that one. It was the one with the surround the ring, the lumberjack match.
And I'm sure I was there. Tell me what it was
Tito
again.
Santana and Greg Valentine for the Intercontinental title in a lumberjack match. And then Andre the Giant teamed up with Superfly Snuka and the Junkyard Dog against Big John Studd, Ken Patera, and Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
And it was the Piper's Pit, too, with Hulk Hogan and Mr. T.
Yes, I was definitely there for that.
Yeah,
yes.
That I think was even better than WrestleMania.
Even the war to settle the score, I thought was even better than WrestleMania. Yep. All that stuff leading up to WrestleMania, obviously WWE rewrites history in for what they want, and they always, the whole thing of, we didn't know if WrestleMania was going to succeed because we were taking such a big chance. Horse shit. I'm allowed to say that on
You
show.
are, yeah.
War to Settle the Score was the biggest thing on cable television on MTV. It was the biggest thing. They were, everything was so blowing up at that point from the moment, the Lou Albano stuff with Cyndi Lauper and that rock and wrestling connection started. WWF was hot as could be. So, for them to say they were putting all their cards into WrestleMania is ridiculous. It was a regular house show at the Garden. Yeah, of course they dumped in, a lot of money for the celebrities, which they didn't need by any chance.
What?
But it's just, it's ridiculous that they would say that all their cards were into WrestleMania. They knew it was going to be a sold-out Garden. Of course it was. Wrestling was so hot at this point. So, the few months before that, everything was already starting to build.
Yeah, the fact, exactly what you say, Joey. It's not like they woke up one day and said, we're going to have this card and call it WrestleMania. The War to Settle the Score, and then there was another one, the Brawl to End It All.
The Brawl to End It All, right.
Yeah, it all kind of was leading up to it. So, yeah, the story of Vince's car breaking down on the way there and didn't have two nickels to rub together and all. It's a great story, but, there may be some embellishment.
And I get it. They rewrite history for what they want. Same thing with the Monday Night Wars. They rewrite it because the victor, gets to rewrite history, right? So I get it. But you got to understand, when I went to the Garden every month, it was sold out every month. Wrestling was hot as can be, especially once the Hogan era started. I mean, even before that, when I saw the Backlund matches, they were all sold out too. Snooker and Andre were such a big draw. They were the biggest draws on the card back then. But once the Hogan era started, it was gold. They were fine. And then when they crossed into the mainstream, like I said, with the Cyndi Lauper stuff, they were gold. There was no way not only WrestleMania was going to fail, but it was so easy to see that it was going to succeed.
Guys, we're sitting here with Joeylicious from the book Wrestling with Joeylicious. And, Joey, the only reason why John brought that up is to tell you that he was at WrestleMania 1. He just wants to remind our listeners that he was there. He wanted to tell you that he was there. That was the whole point of that whole thing. I'm sure he didn't gloat yet that he was there.
Yeah.
Where did you sit?
In his mom's house.
Now he had to go and ask me that. I sat in the Felt Forum, Joey. You blew my cover. For years, I've been telling our listeners I attended WrestleMania 1, which I did.
So you watched it on a screen too,
just like you did. And the funny
thing
is,
here.
My brothers and I went to get tickets to the Garden. Right? I don't remember, at some outlet somewhere. And my one brother said, "Why don't we?" And this is before anything. Why don't we get them for March 31st? Because the next big card is whatever. So my one brother says, let's get him for March 31st. And my other brother says, there's another one 2 weeks before. I really want to go. And I swear to you, Joey, my other brother said, I have a feeling about the 31st. I was like, nah, we'll go to the 15th or the 17th or whatever it was. So we went to the 17th. And then they ended up calling the 31st WrestleMania. Well, obviously it was before that. But
of course,
the 31st became WrestleMania. But we found a way to go to that. We were at the Felt Forum. But you could still feel the place rock. It felt like we were there. And I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. Even though you're watching on a big screen, when Hulk Hogan and Mr. T came out, people reacted like they were there.
Oh, I mean, I remember seeing WrestleMania 3, where I grew up in Brooklyn. We didn't even have cable yet. In the late 80s, there was no cable. We had obviously no pay-per-view or anything like that. There was no cable even, where I grew up in Brooklyn until, the early 90s. So even to watch WrestleMania 3, I remember having to go to another friend's house in a different neighborhood just to watch WrestleMania 3. And I remember, TV this big, the size of my computer screen right now, us all huddled around it like it was the greatest thing, in the world. So, you do not have to be at the live event to feel the magic that was happening back then.
I watched WrestleMania 3 2 hours away. I live in northwestern Pennsylvania, in the woods, more or less. I'll put it that way. We had to drive 2 hours to Katanning, Pennsylvania to watch WrestleMania 3 on that same closed circuit. They might have had 1,000 people in this arena. When Hogan slammed Andre, man, that place erupted. Boom! So I understand the whole closed circuit thing. Yeah, so. All right, John, what else? Well, before we wrap back around to the book in the series.
Yeah. I just want to mention one thing about the series because I want to talk about the action figures. The Roddy Piper episode, and it's, the cameras spanning the room, there's some awesome stuff in there. And I know a thing or two about the LJN series. Do a little plug here. I connected with someone who wrote a book, who then reached out to me and asked if I would edit it. So I got to edit an LJN wrestling figure book, which is out now. I don't think it's in the States yet. But anyway, you had some cool stuff up there. Was that all yours?
All mine. Again, so I'm obviously a big wrestling fan. I've been collecting stuff for years, especially the old LJNs. I don't have a complete run. Like I don't have the Black Series ones and stuff like that, but I do have some. I have the white shirt Hogan, the red shirt Hogan. I have some of the rare ones. I got a Vince, sitting right over here. But yes, all the stuff, the wrestling memorabilia you see in most of those episodes is all from my personal collection, whether it's the DVDs or the toys or the belts. It's all from my personal collection. So, we would get a location, figure out where we're going to shoot, get there, whether a couple hours before, even the night before, depending on how much stuff we really had to set up. And we would just take, boxes of all my stuff and fill it up into a room. And we created, for the Roddy Piper episode, what would be my bedroom. And that's really what my bedroom looked like growing up anyway.
I saw that white shirt Hogan. That is a pretty – I have the same one on my dresser drawer right now. I'm looking at it right now. I don't know if yours had the belt. Mine has the belt, but I don't think the white shirt actually came with the belt at the time.
Mine has the belt, but I'm not sure if it came with it or not either.
Yeah, I believe obviously the first one did, the no shirt.
Right, of course.
Yeah, and then the red shirt did, but I think for some reason the white shirt didn't. Are these some of what you had as a child growing up, or you acquired a lot of this over the years? Is that white shirt Hogan specifically something you had as a kid?
All the rare ones, none of those are from when I was a kid. Some of the beat up ones are, but growing up in Brooklyn, believe it or not, I lost a lot of my stuff as a kid. We grew up in Brooklyn, and I wound up getting evicted from my house. And if you ever watch that show Storage Wars, we had to put all of our stuff in storage. And unfortunately for me, I had a giant trunk filled with wrestling magazines from all the way from the early 70s that I went back and collected at my local comic shop, all the way through the 80s, hundreds and hundreds of magazines, Star Wars toys, wrestling toys, all this stuff. We had to put it in storage because we lost our house financially and stuff. And, about a year or so later, I went to go retrieve that stuff. To find out that, the storage fees were never paid, by, my dad at the time. And we lost all our stuff. It went up for auction. So someone out there today is holding all of my wrestling stuff. If you see any books with the name Joey Cassata written in them, that's my shit.
You bastards.
Yeah, give it back.
Yeah.
Come on,
you dirty bastards.
For being in the heartland of the WWF, really, we didn't get a lot of the rare stuff in the toy stores. Am I right? Like you went, and it was a lot of the first couple of series, but you kind of had to travel to get some of the Magnificent Moroccos or the Kamalas or whatever.
And even back then, you don't know what's rare. You just know, okay, every time I walk in the store, there's Snooker again, there's Hogan again, blah, blah, blah. You don't know that one of the figures is a chase figure, or even like the Black Series figures winds up being a low print run figures, or whatever it is. You don't know that as a kid. You just go back every week. Okay, mom gave me another 10 this week. I can go buy a figure. You go there. If they don't have the one you're looking for, I was, with my parents, we didn't have cars and drive a lot, so we were confined to my local Toys R Us or local KB Toy and Hobby. So if I didn't have the wrestling figure in stock, I bought something else. So I never wind up getting a lot of the rare ones growing up.
Do you do?
Go ahead, John. Go ahead, Mark.
Do you do?
One other quick thing. I'm sorry, Mark. One other quick thing about the figures. When I saw the preview to your show, I said to my wife, I think this is, he says this is Brooklyn, but I said, I think this is like the 86th Street area of Brooklyn. And lo and behold, I see the sign that says 86th Street. There was a Genovese drugstore. Does that ring a bell for you? Yeah. There was one on 86th and I think like Bay 37th, where I actually got, for a few Christmases there, my favorite aunt used to go there to get me.
Your favorite aunt? God, you're going to throw all under the bus. I know all of them. Good job.
Well, she got me, I got Big John Studd and Iron Sheik and Superfly Snooker from that Genovese drugstore. But that was my go-to place for the LJNs.
Funny story. I'm not positive. I'll check with her later. I think my wife worked at that Genovese drugstore when she was a teenager. Yes. Because she tells me all the time that she worked at a Genovese near 86th Street. So it's got to be that one.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy.
We'll wrap up this LJN talk real quick. Do you collect any of the customs that are out there that you see on Facebook, or is there anybody like John got Billy Jack Funk?
Jimmy Jack
Funk, yeah, whatever. I'm drinking already, sorry. Jimmy Jack Funk. Do you buy any of the customs that are out there? They're really good.
I've seen a lot that are great. I haven't bought any yet, but a good buddy of mine named Ruby, and he does a lot of customs on Facebook too. And he's actually doing a Joeylicious custom LJN for me right now. So I can't wait. He gave me a little preview. I know the base figure that he's using. If you guys had to guess, who would you use?
Jumpin' Jim Brunzell.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
Rick Rude.
Mark?
Rick Rude.
That's another. Well, Rick Rude's too expensive, right?
Well, yeah,
you can't use that. Right. No, you got to think of a beater, a little bit of a beater.
All right. Early series then, like Superfly or an Iron Sheik.
He's using a Brutus Beefcake with the thumb up.
Oh,
nice. He's got the pants already, so it's going to be good. He already showed me like the hair sculpt. I think it's going to come out really good. He's done a couple others I saw, like he did Mr. T and Thunder Lips. I saw he does a lot of good stuff, but I do love those custom LJNs.
Nice. All right,
that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Let's wrap back around to Wrestling with Joeylicious. You kind of gave away a little bit that there's a next book coming, and when coronavirus leaves us, that the show is going to come back. When do we look for this? When do we? Do you have a plan already?
So again, the book one is out right now. Book one, what we did for the series, and again, not to give anything away, but I like to give a little insight of what's to be expected. The shorts on Amazon right now, and they're also on my YouTube page for people who don't stream Amazon Prime. You can go to Joey Cassata at YouTube, and you could see all these shorts, including the Chris Jericho episode of that show Z-Rock I was talking about. But moving forward, what we did was the shorts are literally just a preview to kind of showcase the legends of wrestling. The show and the book, you'll find it to be much more of a almost like an 80s comedy, mixed in with the Curb Your Enthusiasm. Think of shows, movies like The Goonies and Stand By Me and Porky's and, movies like that from the 80s. It has that feel to it character base wise, but then it also has these wrestling legends appearing throughout the show. In the book, Stone Cold is in there. There's a scene with Ric Flair where him and I battle a bunch of senior citizens at a bingo hall. And, it's just fun stuff with the wrestlers. But the premise of the show is really me and my buddy Scally trying to make it in the wrestling business. And we, not to give you guys a preview of what's coming, but, we kind of take a script out of Rocky, like, hey, maybe this dumb-hearted Italian slob from Brooklyn, not Philadelphia like Rocky, is going to eventually get a shot at the title. And that's kind of where book one leaves off. There's a scene with Chris Jericho at the end of book one that kind of leaves you wondering, hey, maybe Joeylicious is about to get his shot. And that's kind of where book two will kind of continue my feud maybe with Jericho and some real wrestlers too.
So this is great. This isn't a one-shot deal because, unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier, Roddy Piper's not with us anymore. Nikolai Volkov isn't with us anymore. This is something – it's been an ongoing project for you.
Oh, absolutely. We've been developing this since 2014. Again, people don't realize it takes years to develop a TV show, especially when you're doing it like I'm doing from the ground up, literally from the ground up. For the first few shorts, I was funding everything. Then we got some people to come on board and start funding the show with us and a production company and so on and so forth. So it takes a lot of time. And, we've been getting hiccups along the way. And then we would get a great contract and then that would fall through. And, someone at a big network wanted the show. We had contracts on the table. That person leaves before the contract is signed. Contract falls off the table. You got to start from scratch again. So, yes, this show has been developing for a long time. Everything is scripted out. It's going to be an ongoing series. We have a lot more interest again now, not only with the Amazon Shorts on Prime, but with the success of the book, we've been getting a lot more feedback that, hey, this does look like it's, because everyone would always say, does this show have legs? And that's like a term in the industry where what it means is, can this show stand for a long time? Is this show going to keep, lasting for 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons? And the answer is yes. And you could see from the book, the storyline in the book and the next book, how the story develops throughout 1 and 2 seasons.
Sometimes I think that as soon as I hear of something, everybody else has heard of it too, and it never existed before I heard of it. I kind of live in my own bubble, Joey. But again, with the idea that unfortunately some of these superstars are no longer with us. So it's been a few years. So I'm going, Mark says, you have to see this, go to Prime, go to YouTube. And I'm seeing 2020 dates where I'm expecting to maybe see 2016, 2015. What do you attribute this Joeylicious resurgence to, that these little shorts are now coming back and people are able to see them?
So it's funny you say that. So a lot of people, with COVID, everyone is shutting down and I can't do this and everyone's depressed and all that stuff. Like I said earlier, I'm the opposite. As soon as that hit and I couldn't pour anymore and I couldn't go film and do, stuff that I do full time, I said, okay, let me put all my energy back into figuring out how to get this done, starting with the book, of course. But while we were finishing up the book, I was also shopping these shorts for distribution. And Amazon Prime, luckily for me, loved the idea, loved the shorts. We had to clear some copyright issues and stuff up, but, they picked them up to be streamed brand new in 2020. I think they just started right before the book came out. So, even though those shorts are older now because they were filmed, 2014 all the way up through 2018, they're just streaming legitimately to the public for the first time now. So that's why you see the 2020 dates on Amazon Prime.
It's a gutsy project. And Mark,
it's an amazing project. I love it.
It really is. It really is. We've dreamed of similar things, of being able to interact with wrestlers in that capacity, getting beat up by them and all that sort of stuff. But to just be able to sit down and put pen to paper with this idea in mind is pretty gutsy, Joey. It really is, to say, like, I'm going to do this, and then to make it work. I mean, to go out and get these guys is pretty incredible.
Well, it's funny. I say this a lot, and I always kid around my wife. My wife always kids around with me, and she tells me, I know there's no show called Wrestling with Joeylicious. You just want to go play with these wrestlers and have them beat you up. And I tell her, you know what? You're exactly right. It's true. But you know what? There is going to be a hit TV show out of it also. And what you said too, John, it's funny, as big as the book was when it first came out, because I have a pretty decent fan base from my old TV show, from the bands I'm in. So luckily for me, immediately when I put or release something, my autobiography is also on Amazon right now, which talks a lot about filming with these guys and behind the scenes of getting the Iron Sheik to film. And Nikolai Volkov wasn't even in the episode, and he kind of forced his way into the episode. But that's also another book that's available on Amazon right now. It's called Start with the Dream. And that kind of tells the history of my work ethic and my dreams of becoming a wrestler. It's a complete autobiography, no fiction at all. But, through all of that, I'm just one of these guys that doesn't take no for an answer. And I think, with you guys rediscovering or just discovering it for the first time, what I'm hoping with what this book does and what the shorts on Amazon finally does, the wrestling community is such a rabid fan base. I can't even imagine if I saw this, if I'm in your guys' seats and I saw a new show with this type of premise, these characters, my heroes as wrestlers in it, I would be all in from the second I saw, the first clip. So what I'm hoping, if we could all do together, and I need your help too, let's get the word out there, because the wrestling community is so rabid. All of this stuff, if the fan base wants it, they'll demand it enough that we'll be able to get this on air eventually. And with the success of the book, I do think that's right around the corner. I just need all the fans and podcasts and wrestling news companies to kind of spread the word.
Do you have a Patreon or anything that we can help send you some money? Can Crusher Nation can send you some money. Anything like that to help push us along a little bit more.
No money is needed. I need you guys to stream the episodes. I need you to buy the book and spread the word. If you buy the book, leave a review and post about the book on your social media. All the podcasts, when you post about the podcast, post the link to the stuff, spread the word, share it to, if anyone has any connections to PW Torch and Pro Wrestling Illustrated and all the big wrestling news outlets, demand that this show get made and tell them to, get press out there about it. Tell them the stars that I have on board, from Hogan to Flair and all these guys. And the more the wrestling community bands together, it'll happen. With the guys that I have signed on board for the show, I think they have upwards of like 30 or 40 million social media followers. So
that's a couple.
If just their followers watch this show when it airs, it's going to be a hit immediately. I just need to get these networks to buy into a show about wrestling and some 80s wrestling too.
Nice.
Can Crushers listeners, we've been talking to Joey Cassata of Wrestling with Joeylicious. If you have an Amazon Prime membership, search for Wrestling with Joeylicious. There are about a half dozen or so episodes on there. They're between 3 and 6 minutes long. They're very enjoyable. They're entertaining. They're funny. And as we mentioned during the course of this show, I think you'll be surprised by, or maybe you won't be. Maybe you'll expect the acting chops that you get from a Mick Foley or a Roddy Piper or even a Tito Santana. So besides, and maybe you mentioned this, Joey, besides that handful of episodes, I've read about Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and others. Are those out there anywhere just yet? Is there someplace I can see those other than the half dozen or so that are on Amazon?
No, so the ones that are on Amazon right now and also my YouTube page are the ones that are in the can filmed right now. We do have plenty of other ones right before COVID hit, ready to be filmed with other superstars like Jake the Snake, Honky Tonk Man, Ted DiBiase, all these guys. But, unfortunately, because of COVID and, what we would really, the shorts are fun and they're great, but it's not the end goal. The end goal is to make 30-minute sitcom episodes of this show. And, these shorts will be sprinkled in those episodes as part of the actual scenes in those episodes. So these shorts are really just plucked out of what eventually will be
teasers,
full episodes. So that's the ultimate goal. Exactly right. Teasers is the best way to put it.
Wait, don't say goodbye yet.
I don't even need a minute like Brando, the Santino Corleone scene. I just like that. Whatever you need, I can do it.
I want to take the guitar shot from Honky Tonk Man. I want to take a guitar shot from Honky Tonk Man. Please help us set this up.
So again, a funny story, obviously, building the wrestling history of me. In my old show, Z-Rock, I tried to fit in as much of that type of stuff as I could, which eventually led to this episode with Chris Jericho in it where I play the character Joeylicious. But in an episode in season 1 of Z-Rock, there was a scene where we're playing a kid's birthday party and we get into this rival fight with this kids band. And of course, in the scene, the kids band, is supposed to knock me out, hitting me in the jaw. And I said, whoa, this sounds like the perfect opportunity for me to be blasted in the head with a guitar. And sure enough, they made it happen, and there's clips of this all online. If you type in Z-Rock, I think it's the second episode of season 1. At the end of the episode, one of the guys from the rival bands, the kids band, literally blasts me in the head with an acoustic guitar. And unlike the coconut in my scene, this thing almost legitimately killed me.
I'm sure.
Wow.
I've taken one across the back before, and I was down for a day. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know.
I
know we're putting you on the spot, Joey, but in all seriousness, I know we sound like a couple of marks begging somebody for an autograph, but if there's anything we can do to help,
we're there.
We'd love to be out there. We really would.
Guys, no joking around. We're always looking for help, especially, as soon as COVID is over. Like I said, I have these couple little shorts ready to go. Jake, I was just speaking with Jake and his manager the other day. So we're ready to go on this stuff. I'm always looking for a guerrilla crew, cameras, sound, extras, all that stuff to come down and do the shoot with me. on, a shoestring budget until we get one of these big networks to kind of get behind us. So if you guys know any of that stuff, I'd love to have you.
We're in. I know the technical part. He's the better looking one, so we'll just leave it at that.
Dude, we'll definitely get you on camera. I'd love to have Jake, put a snake on you or something. It'd be great.
I'm out. Nope, I'm out. Nope, no snakes for me.
He's worse than Andre the Giant around snakes.
I really am. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
Joey, thank you for spending some time with us. What else? Tell us where you can follow on social media, your YouTube page, all of that before we wrap up.
So really easy. My name all across the board at Joey Cassata, JoeyCassata, all across social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even YouTube. Just type in Joey Cassata or go on Amazon, type in Joeylicious. All the stuff will come up. We have T-shirts. We have the episode streaming on Amazon Prime. We have the book for sale. Everything everything is kind of Amazon is the home base for Joeylicious. So you can check all that stuff out. But even my social media pages, I'm always posting these clips from, I just posted the clip with the Chris Jericho episode of my old show Z-Rock the other day on my Facebook and Instagram page. You can go check all that stuff out. But more than anything, even more than buying the book, spread the word that Joeylicious is coming. And what you going to do, brother, when Joeylicious runs wild on you.
Thanks, Joey. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, boys.
Wow, Mark, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
We might be on that, John. I'm pretty excited about that. That's it. That's in my mind right now. Like I'm just so stoked. I really am. I want to do everything
for you.
I'm
excited. I've been aching to dust off my acting chops, and if I could do something like that with some of my childhood heroes, how amazing would that be?
Would you take a guitar shot?
I would take the guitar shot. I'd take the DDT. I'd take
on concrete.
Whatever.
Boom.
Wow. No, maybe not that.
You're not Ricky Steamboat then?
No, I'm not Ricky Steamboat. No. A lot of great information. We learned about what goes into a project like this and how hard the guy's been working on this thing and how long he's been working on this thing.
Yeah, about 6 years, roughly. He's been doing everything. You go back and you watch some of the shorts, Piper's not with us and Volkov's not with us, Snuka's not with us. So you can tell it's been a little bit. But I like that he's not about making these shorts. This is supposed to be an episodic Seinfeld, my favorite one, Friends, just because I'm that guy, half an hour show. This is amazing. Would you not watch that?
Absolutely.
I would.
Are you kidding?
Skip Raw every week to watch this.
Yeah, I've been dying to watch a show to tune into something for a half hour a week, just an old fashioned half hour sitcom. And if it was about wrestling, that would be great.
I love that he's a huge NWA Power fan. Man, he knows. He's our type of guy. Old school, loves NWA Power, goes back to the old stuff as when we were growing up. There's nothing bad I can say about Joey. He's a wonderful human being as well.
Yeah, coincidentally, we're both Italian and from kind of the same section of Brooklyn. I'm surprised that came up in the conversation between us. Are you surprised at all that I mentioned that and talked about that for a good bit of time?
No, I'm shocked that you actually weren't the one that said that you were at WrestleMania 1, that I had to bring it to everybody's forefront.
Joey blew my cover there, though. I've been running with that one for years, and Joey just blew my cover.
You were there.
Yeah.
You were there.
Yeah.
You were there.
I was there. We'll go back to that. I was there.
So, book number 2, probably in January. Once the COVID's done, we're going to get the shows, hopefully. Man, you have to spread the word about this. You really have to spread the word about it. If you're a wrestling fan, this is your niche, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you loved wrestling in the 80s and 90s, but really at any point, this is right up your alley. Guys, again, if you haven't watched the 5 or 6 shorts, go to Amazon Prime or you can go to his YouTube channel and check them out. They're a lot of fun. And I know we keep going back to this, but Mark, this is an opportunity for you to maybe use your communications major. There's an opportunity for me to use the acting classes I took.
Yeah. I was swallowing my alcoholic beverage right now. I'm sorry.
Joey's probably listening to this and thinking, oh, my God, what did I get myself into with these two marks?
Right? The gas is already in the car. We're ready to go. He makes a phone call, and Joey comes up. It doesn't matter what Joey comes up on my phone. We're heading to New York. It could be Joey Porter from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know. But I'm heading to Joey right off the bat, Joeylicious, and then I'll find out, oh, wrong Joey. It's anytime I get a phone call, I'm going.
Better to be prepared.
It is. Suitcase is packed. I'm good to go.
Bags are packed, Joey.
We're ready. Again, thank you, Joeylicious, for coming on the show. This was amazing. I loved it. I loved it. John, let's not lie. We've been beating around the bush. This was us. It is us. What am I saying?
It absolutely is. What he did, and we mentioned it on the show, was gutsy, but it would have been a dream come true for us to interact with these guys, to perform with these guys. He made it happen. So really, hats off to this guy.
He's next level, though, compared to us just destroying a house in general. He had his own room with matting on. Why didn't we think of that? That's amazing. I love that he had a battle royal. You had to throw him out of the room. That's great.
Yeah, we had a battle royal in my mom's living room, if you remember. That was more like the old style Georgia Championship Wrestling, like King of the Ring thing where you could pin the guy. And they did it in Texas, too. You can pin the guy or make him submit. There was a referee in the battle royal. We never thought to pick people up and throw them out of the room, though. That's pretty innovative.
We have to pass this along to our kids. We really do.
Yeah.
We really do.
Next time they get together.
Yeah. So, all right, John, you want to wrap this up because it's amazing. I'm going to listen to this again tomorrow, and then I'm going to call Joey and see if he's ready for us, and we'll be good to go.
Remember, Mark, just because you're trash, it doesn't mean you can't do great things.
It's called a garbage can, not a garbage cannot.